Hello everyone, I'm Sheryl Steinruck and we're going to do a demonstration on making homemade Himalaya berry jelly. We're not really doing jam today. Himalayas have a lot of seeds and so we're crushing the seeds out, and we need to get 5 cups of liquid, which is right here. I've done it already. The one we're going to be using is Sheryl gel, and the recipe calls for 5 cups of juice and then 7 cups of sugar, which is over there. And so what I just wanted to show you, go out and pick some berries. The other container was just about this big and it gave me the 5 cups I need. So what you need to do is go out and get some berries. Now I have it all set up here. This is the jars. There are a lot of preparation before you do this. Many of you have done it before, some of you haven't. And when you get your Sheryl gel container, you can have MCP, Sheryl gel, and you want to follow your directions inside the cover. And so what we're going to do is you have your ladle, you have your funnel, you have everything ready. This here is going to be for when we get right up to that point of wiping off the jars before we put the lids on. And that'll be done over here in this area. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the stove now. And I have this set up. We're going to go ahead and in this pot, we're going to put in the liquid, 5 cups of juice. Basically, there's a little bit of seeds in there, but you can see the foam on here. And we're going to put in the Sheryl gel, the pectin first, with the berry liquid, which is right here. Now we're going to turn this on, stir in this pectin until it comes to a rolling boil. And a rolling boil is one that you really can't stir down. So because this is electricity, we might go about 7.5 or 8. So we're going to stir this in, get it all melted in here together. The one thing about making jam is it takes just time. It's not hard to do, it's just time consuming. But if you like homemade jam, it works well. So what we're going to do first here is we're going to go ahead and put this in, and plus we're going to put in a half a teaspoon of butter. The butter helps with the, that's a good guesstimation. The butter helps with the foaming of the juice. It helps eliminate the foaming. So you want to put your butter in there, your pectin, and your liquid. In the meantime, while this is getting ready to warm up, over here is my pan with my lids. What we like to do is warm up our lids. That keeps them warm. Then it makes the rubber here soft and pliable, so when you put it on your jar, it will adhere. You want it to seal. Then I also have the sugar already measured out, because what's going to end up happening is that once this starts to boil, we're going to add in the sugar, and then we're going to bring it to a boil and let it boil for 1 minute. And after we get done boiling it for 1 minute, we'll ladle it into the jars, and then we'll put the lid on the jars with the rings, and then we will turn it upside down for 5 minutes. Now I did want to try the pink box recipe box of Sheryl gel, which only calls for 4 cups of sugar as opposed to 7. But it just didn't quite work out with the recipe we were trying to do, so we decided to go back to the tried and true. I didn't want to experiment, because sometimes I've made jam where it turned out just like syrup. It didn't set up. So like they say, a watched pot never boils. But we gotta watch this pot. So this is gonna take some time to get this heat up in here, in the heat of the pan. Let's set this over here. Now one thing you're going to notice as you're cooking jam, you don't want it to stick on the bottom. And so when it says stir constantly, that means stirring constantly. You know, I started helping my mother, my aunts can when I was about 8 years old. Back in the day, everybody had their own gardens. We canned everything from carrots to string beans to peas to corn to deer meat, beef. We didn't get a whole lot of elk back in the day either, but we sure like it. Beets, I mean, I said that. The things that grow around in this part of the country. So, a lot of it's kind of interesting with COVID-19 now. A lot of people are staying home, sheltering in, and people are trying some of these things for the first times in their lives. They've never really done it before, but since they're staying home, they might as well give it a try. And that's why we decided to come up with this idea for you if you'd like to try it. Berries are abundant right now. One of the things that you want to do now is the time here in Delaware County to pick berries. And you want to pick them before the first rain. Once it rains, what happens is the rain will cause the berries to rot. And then they'll mold really quickly after that. But right now they're nice and juicy because we've had some really hot days. But you do have to be careful if they get too dried out, then the berry dries out. So we've gotten a lot of berries and made a lot of jam already. But this is just for a demonstration here today. Okay, so did I talk about squeezing out the seeds? No, not in this video. Yeah. The one thing I wanted to share, now see there's some steam coming up here. You can see it's starting to get hot. So you have to pay attention now. I don't want to burn it. So you've got to turn it down. And then once this starts boiling, we're going to dump in the sugar. And what happens is the pectin is what makes it set up. It makes and stiff. Now, a lot of people like to keep like strawberries. You know, there's different kind of jams you can make. Peach, pear. And sometimes you want to keep some of that fresh fruit in there because it will cook up a little. Like strawberry preserves are where you actually basically are leaving the strawberries whole. But our kids just love homemade jam and jelly. A lot of times our kids will put jam and jelly on their pancakes rather than syrup. And another thing that my family did traditionally with a lot of berries that we picked, my mom used to grow domesticated berries, loganberries, and some of like boysenberries. And we would go ahead and can those. And then in the wintertime, when we wanted to make a cobbler or a pie, we had berries. You know, nowadays you can freeze them. Back in the day, we canned everything, like I said. Now things are pretty much frozen or what's it called, packed, when it's vacuum sealed. That's what I want to say. What you want to have is a fairly heavy pan when you're cooking this kind of stuff. If you have a thin bottom pan, too thin, it'll burn easily. And you really don't want your food to burn. It's a pain. You do all this work and then you burn it. So it doesn't hurt to invest in a nice pan for stuff like this. I like to have a big wide open pan like this because it's easier to ladle in and ladle out. Actually, ladle out, I should say. Okay, we're starting to bubble. So that means, can you see the bubbles in there? They're starting to bubble. And so that means I'm going to go ahead and gradually stir in the sugar. Now this is what's going to cause it to set up also. So as you're stirring, that's why you want to pre-measure everything so that it's ready to go when you need it. So this sugar is going to dissolve into this. You want to come see how it looks when you're dumping it in. But you will have to get all of this worked into the liquid. And some of you may have made candy before. This is a summer process of making candy. Now I got sugar up on this thing. Okay, so now, once this starts boiling, I'll turn the timer on for 1 minute. So it's going to dissolve all the sugar in here now. And then we're going to turn it up once it starts boiling. I can already feel it's getting stiffer. Even as I'm stirring, it's getting thicker. And it thickens as it cools also. Now I like to use slotted spoons. I chose to use a wooden one today. I use a lot of wooden spoons. Now one of the things it says in here, if you want to ladle off the, or spoon off any foam that's going to develop, you can do it with a metal spoon. Right now it doesn't have much foam at all because we put that butter in there. I don't use margarine anymore. I use butter. And there was a fallacy a while back when Americans shouldn't eat butter because it was going to kill us, right? And now we found out that margarine will actually kill us. So I went back to butter. But yeah, I can remember as a kid, all my aunts, all the old women I knew that lived around here all knew how to do this. It was a common thing everywhere you went. During the harvesting season, after that, everybody was busy canning. Everybody was putting food away because that's what we did traditionally as Indian people too. And we're always working for the winter stores, especially around here where it did rain a lot because we used to have a lot more redwood trees back in the day. And when it started raining, you didn't do nothing but stay inside. So you had to have everything you needed ready for the winter or you would starve. And plus my parents, they were born during the Great Depression. And so we conserved everything. Recycled, reused, even back in the day. So I've been recycling for 45, 50 years already. Because I think that's our duty and responsibility anyway as American Indians is to take care of our Mother Earth. And that includes pollution and litter and all those things. And one of the things that you do when you first go picking anything, if it's berries, bear grass, woodwardia, whatever you're picking, whatever you're going to gather, even your first deer, first elk, you always say, "Thank you, Creator." You give thanks for that because it's part of the cycle of life. So this creature, this plant is giving their life for you to sustain yours. So you have that reverence for the living and the dead. So the first time you go picking berries, you say, "Jump, humney, I wish you come again." Okay, I'm going to turn it up a little bit just so I can hurry the process because it does take some time to stir this where you can't rush it too much. I can remember as a kid, this was my job. I got to stand there at the stove and stir. So I'd make all these patterns in the bottom of the pan. And then because it's quite a process to get everything ready, you wash your jars first, prepare your fresh fruit, get everything laid out and measured so that when you start in the process, you don't have any hiccups along the way. You just go right through the smooth process. And one of the things you want to do too, if you're canning and you're putting things away like this, you want to put a date on them. And when you date them, you put the newest stuff in the back of the cupboard and move your old stuff up to the front. And that way you're always making sure that you have the good food and not something that's gone wrong. Now, one thing that does tell you in the directions, when I get ready to put the lids on here, after they've been sitting for 5 minutes, you turn them over. And when a lid seals, it dips in. And so you press it with your finger, and if it doesn't bump up and down, then that means it's sealed. If it moves, then it didn't seal. And that's why we like to heat up the lids, because then that helps us to make sure it seals. Of course, this is going to be hot. All right, I'm seeing the first bubbles here, so maybe we're getting close. So you get it to where you can't stir it down. That's why you want to have a deeper pot, because this is going to boil up. And if you have too small a pot, you're going to burn yourself. It's very hot at this point. And you just need to be careful. Okay, so we're getting to a boil here. Just about right. So I'm going to put the timer on for 1 minute. Yeah, we like to teach all the young girls how to do this. We always tell them, you might marry a lazy man. You'll have to do it yourself. We also tell the boys, like my brothers, they learn how to do all this too, because they might marry a lazy woman that doesn't know what to do, and you might have to teach her. Because you have to have food for your children. It's our responsibility to care for our children, provide everything they need. And some people are lazy. We know that. But then again, I think some people just haven't had a chance to learn. And so when people get a chance to learn, that's their opportunity to share that knowledge and to have it go on to the next generations. And a lot of times knowledge will skip generations, especially within the Indian country when we've had the experience of boarding schools and one-room schoolhouses, and the fact that our religion and language was taken from us forcefully. The people who were trying to blend in didn't teach their children, so sometimes you have the grandchildren come along going, how do you say this? How do you do that? Grandma, show me this, show me that. And that's where I think it's really wonderful to be able to pass that knowledge on to the next generations. So that's 1 minute. So now what we're going to do is we're going to turn off this heat. We're going to bring this boiling hot pan over here to this area. Let's see, I can set it right here. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to ladle this hot jelly into these jars. Oh, excuse me, I got to get my lids. Sorry. And I also have to get my rings over here. I like to get my rings wet because then that allows them to slip on easier and not dry. So you have everything ready here. Here's one jar with the funnel in it. So now what we're going to do, this is very hot, so you got to remember that. Is you're going to take this, oops. Our daughter is much better at this than me. She's a perfectionist. So then you're just going to go ahead and fill these jars right up to the top of the neck of the jar. So if you see here, right to the neck of the jar. Now you can get all this kind of canning equipment usually before COVID, when everybody wasn't trying to get everything done. You know, at Walmart, Fred Meyer, they come in these kits. You can get everything together. You can get the funnel, and the different tools and equipment you need for canning. And this one actually came with a timer that we didn't use. When you're going to do a canner, where you're doing pressure cookers, you definitely have to have timers. You really have to watch it a lot closer. You know, someday maybe we could do that show, but right now we're just doing jam or jelly at this point. Yeah, tuna is coming up now for canning. Some people are doing a lot of that. So usually by this time of the year, if you haven't gotten your jars, your lids, and your rings and everything by now, you won't get them because they're always buying seasonally around here. Back when I was a kid and we had the old hardware stores, they carried them year-round. Hanscoms and different places, you could go get jars anytime you wanted. But now it's just according to whenever the shipment comes in from wherever they come from. And so you got to get them early if you're going to do this kind of stuff. So usually most canners, people who can, will have all this stuff on hand because you're going to reuse these jars. These are all reused jars. And one thing I want to tell you is that when you check in that the jar that's already been used, when you wash it, you got to check this top part to make sure there are no chips, there are no nicks. Because if there is a chip in here, it will not seal. And then you will have wasted whatever it is. And it's really important to check if you're going to use a pressure cooker because if those are cracked in any way, it will actually explode inside the canner. Make a big mess. So those are the kind of things you got to just know, tricks of the trade, so to speak. But if you've been around old grandma and old auntie that's done this, she'll tell you all that while she's teaching you. And I'm sloppy, as you can see. That's why I have this plate down here to catch all my drips. You can see the steam still coming up on here, the heat. I'm not about to touch it. I actually enjoy doing this kind of stuff. You gotta like it or you aren't gonna do it. And some of us are just crazy enough to like stuff like this. Getting down to the end. So I'm not sure how many jars we'll do. You always want to have more jars than you need because it is a pain if you have more stuff that you need to use, put in a jar and your jars aren't there. It's just a waste of time. It's really stressful. Okay, so I think we got one more we can do. And a lot of times if you don't fill a full jar, that's okay because then you can just go ahead and put it in the refrigerator and use it later. And that's what you'll want to do too with the ones that don't seal. You're going to want to put those in the refrigerator and use that up first. And also remember I told you to mark them. Put the month and the year on your lid. And also if you wanted to say what it is that's in the jar. If you want to give your stuff away to your friends or family, you know, I know what you're giving them and when you gave it to them. Now you take a old dishcloth and you make sure, I'm gonna wash this off a little bit because it's got a little bit of my juices on my fingers. And of course you never touch your mouth, you never scratch, you never do any of those kind of things when you're working with food. But you're gonna take this cloth and get any drippings that might have gotten on there. Then you're gonna take, oh, I forgot my knot for me. And I always use a knife because this water's warm generally, depending on how long I let it cook over there. And then you take your ring. This is where a, what do you call this, comes in handy, apron. And you turn it upside down. And just go to the next jar. And that's hot. Get your lid. Come on. Your ring. You can reuse all of these. These are all used. There's no reason why you can't. That's hot for me, so I'm going to grab me a towel. You want to just hand tighten it. And it's hot. So I'm going to move this out of the way because I got to have my... The one thing I like about when you're cooking, sewing, anything, set your environment up for whatever you think you need. You need to be comfortable in your own kitchen or your own area. So if you need to move something around, move it around. That's what, you know. Now a lot of the lids, like this one, will have a date mark on here. It's kind of hot. So you can go ahead and take a Sharpie. Sharpies work the best. And just go ahead and write on there, you know, the date. And that way you won't have to worry about it. Once it's cold though, not now. And that way you'll have it all ready for when you get ready to put it in your cupboard, or you're going to give it to your Aunt Sally or whoever the heck it is. Your cousin Mike, he might like it, who knows. And so it's kind of nice, you know, to go out berry picking and enjoying the weather and the sunshine. And now if your rings are bent a little, they might have gotten, you want to make sure your lid's on there nice and straight. But your ring should go on pretty easy. I can remember when I was a kid, because we canned every year and we reuse jars and rings all the time. The thing you need to change is your lid. The lid will definitely be reused. You won't use that again. Don't actually think. And there's something I'm going to say about that. What was it? Oh, if your ring is bent, do not use it. And especially if you're going to be using the pressure cooker. Because if it buckles, just like if it was a thick jar, you know, you're going to have a mess. And plus, it's just for safety and common sense. Because you definitely want it to seal. A lot of people get afraid of canning, but we've done it all of our lives, so I guess there's nothing for me to fear. But some people are really afraid. And, you know, you need to get over that, because otherwise you won't be successful. And it's sort of like self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think you can't, you won't. And if you think you can, you will. It's kind of that whole thing, too. But it's fun. Now, see, like I said, I like to get these wet, because when they're wet like this, rather than when they're dry, they go on for me easier. Now, I haven't been timing this. We usually turn them over for 5 minutes, but here I am just yakking away and then set a timer, and I'm like that. So I'll go, whoa, how long has it been? It's like, is that a tablespoon or a teaspoon? You know how you learn how to guess that over time? Oop, you hear that? That's just what you want to hear. Pop. Pop goes the weasel. Oh, I make idiot noise all day, sorry. Okay. Alrighty, that's our last one. So maybe we'll start our 5 minutes or something from this last one. Let's see, what time is it? Oh, that's hot. Now, the one thing when you're doing jam, whatever you're wearing, it's going to get berries on it. So if you want to wear something old and borrowed and blue, then you can. I put on this apron because I just don't want it all over. See, it's got this all over. And one thing you'll notice too, like once you start doing a lot of canning, you'll save your favorite cloth. Excuse me, that'll be the one that's all stained up. But you'll know it's clean because you use it all the time. So, okay, we're going to let that sit. And then we're going to go ahead and turn those over. And then as they're cooling, the lid will pull down. And like I said, once, let me get one of these out again. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So what you're going to do is once you get this lid on here and this ring on here, Now, say we went through the whole 5-minute process. We waited. Oops. And we set it there. And when we get ready to turn it over, this is sticking up. It's not done. It's not sealed, I meant. So another thing that my mom used to do, because we used to can, or the whole counter would be full of peaches and pears and tomatoes and everything else. Then when we turn it over, we go like this. And when a lid is sealed, it makes a different sound. See how it's kind of floppy? But when it's tight, it makes a different sound. It's hard for me to show you right now because this isn't sealed. But yeah, we used to do that. We'd go along there with a knife and we'd know which one's sealed and which didn't. Then we'd go back like this and sure enough. So if that was, a jar of peaches or, whatever it might be, that goes in the refrigerator, and that's what you make your cobbler out of or whatever it is. Okay, so I'm not good at time. Let's go ahead and turn this one over we started with. And when they seal, you'll hear a pop. Just like that sound I made. And what's happening is the air is sucking out of it and pulling the lid down as it cools. And that's what makes it seal. You want to have them so that you set them apart. And one thing we used to do when I was a kid, because this whole counter would be full, you take a flour cloth dish towel. This one here I use for acorns. Sorry. But then what you do is you take and you lay it over here like this. Say if you're going to go to bed and you just leave it out all night. Then when you come back in the morning, pull that off and go through, like I was saying, to test and see which one's sealed and which one hasn't. So that's the end of the presentation, and next is to taste it. Have a good day.